Jake Morrison stood at the window of his small research station and watched the purple sun dip below the horizon. 8 months. That was how long he had been alone on this planet. 8 long months, with nothing but his computer and the strange alien forest for company. He was a scientist, sent here to study the plants and animals of Kepler 442b. The job sounded exciting when he signed up for it back on Earth. A whole new world to explore. New species to discover, but nobody told him how lonely it would be. The supply ships only came once every 3 months, and the crews never stayed long. Just long enough to drop off food and equipment. Then they were gone again. Jake sighed and turned away from the window. He needed to collect more samples before it got too dark. The forest was dangerous at night, but he knew the paths well enough by now. He grabbed his sample kit and his flashlight, then headed out into the violet trees. The air smelled different here than on Earth. Sweet, but also sharp, like mint, mixed with honey. The trees had thick, purple leaves that glowed softly in the fading light. Small creatures moved through the branches above his head, making clicking sounds that echoed through the forest. Jake walked along the crystal river, looking for the blue moss he needed for his research. The water was clear and moved slowly over smooth stones. He had just knelt down to scrape some moss into a container when he heard it. A scream, not a human scream. This was higher, more musical, but filled with terror. Jake dropped his container and stood up fast. His heart pounded in his chest. He should go back to the station. He should call for help. But the scream came again, closer this time, and Jake found himself running toward the sound. He crashed through the purple bushes and slid down a small hill. That was when he saw them. 3 men in dark armor, carrying big guns that glowed with blue light. They were chasing someone small and fast through the trees. Jake caught a glimpse of silver-blue skin and knew immediately what he was looking at. A Vela, one of the native aliens who lived in the deep forest. The men were shouting in Galactic Common, a language Jake had learned during his training. "Stop running. Little prize. We will catch you anyway. The exotic pet dealers will pay good money for a live one. Don't damage her. She is worth more in perfect condition." Jake felt anger rise in his chest. These were hunters. Illegal traders who captured rare aliens to sell them as pets to rich people across the galaxy. He had heard about them, but never thought he would see them here. The young Vela girl ran straight toward Jake's position. She was small, maybe 16 years old if she aged like humans. Her skin was the color of moonlight on water, and her large eyes glowed with fear. 2 thin antennae on her head pulsed with a bright, frightened orange light. She did not see Jake until she almost ran into him. Her eyes went wide and she tried to change direction. But one of the hunters fired his weapon. A glowing net shot through the air and wrapped around her legs. She fell hard and cried out in pain. Jake did not think. He just moved. He ran forward and placed himself between the hunters and the fallen girl. "Stop," he shouted. "Leave her alone." The 3 hunters stopped and looked at him with surprise. Then they started laughing. "A human?" the first one said. "What are you doing here, human? Go away, before you get hurt." "Oh, this is illegal," Jake said, trying to keep his voice steady. The second hunter raised his gun and pointed it at Jake. "You are reporting no one. You are all alone out here, human. No one will know what happened to you." Jake's mind raced. He could not fight these men. They had weapons and armor. He had nothing but his flashlight and his sample kit, but he knew something they did not know. He knew this forest. Jake pulled a small cylinder from his kit. It was a chemical flare he used to mark his path when exploring new areas. But it had another property. When burned, it released a smell that mimicked the pheromones of a ridge stalker, one of the most dangerous predators on this planet. "Last warning," the first hunter said. "Move, or we shoot you." Jake lit the flare and threw it at the hunters. The chemical burst into bright red flames and thick smoke poured out. The smell hit the air immediately, sharp and aggressive. For a moment, nothing happened. Then the forest came alive. Clicking sounds filled the trees, not the small, gentle clicking of the tree dwellers. This was loud and fast, the sound of something big moving through the branches. The hunters heard it too. Their faces changed from confident to worried. "What did you do?" the second hunter shouted. A ridge stalker dropped from the trees behind them. It was as big as a horse, with 6 legs and a mouth full of sharp teeth. Its body was covered in dark green scales that blended with the forest. More clicking sounds came from different directions. The hunters had walked into a ridge stalker pack territory, and the flare made them think one of their own was being attacked. The hunters forgot about the girl and started shooting at the creatures. Jake ran to the fallen Vela girl and pulled the net off her legs. "Can you run?" he asked. She stared at him with her large, glowing eyes. She did not speak, but she nodded. "Follow me." Jake grabbed her hand and pulled her to her feet. They ran together through the forest while the hunters fought the angry creatures behind them. Jake knew every path in this area. He led the girl to a small opening between 2 rocks that he had found weeks ago. The entrance was narrow, too small for the ridge stalkers to follow. They squeezed through and found themselves in a system of caves. Jake turned on his flashlight, and they kept moving deeper into the caves. Behind them, the sounds of fighting faded away. They walked for what felt like an hour, until Jake saw the familiar markings he had made on the cave walls. They were close to his station. Finally, they emerged from a hidden exit just 50 meters from Jake's building. He looked around carefully to make sure the hunters had not followed, then led the girl inside and locked the door. The girl collapsed on his floor, breathing hard. Jake grabbed his medical kit and knelt beside her. She flinched away at first, but he moved slowly and kept his hands where she could see them. "It is okay," he said softly. "I want to help you." He cleaned the cuts on her legs where the net had cut into her skin. Then, he brought her water and some dried fruit from his supplies. She drank the water quickly and ate the fruit slowly, watching him the whole time. Jake pulled out his translation device and set it between them. "Can you understand me now?" he asked. The device beeped and chirped, then the girl spoke. Her voice was musical and gentle. The device translated her words into English. "Yes, I understand. Thank you for saving me." "What is your name?" Jake asked. "I am called Lyra," she said. "I am from the Silver Moon tribe. I went too far from our territory. Those bad men caught me." "My name is Jake," he said. "You are safe here. The hunters will not find you." Lyra looked around the small station with wonder in her eyes. She had probably never seen human technology before. "Why did you help me?" she asked. "You do not know me. You could have died." Jake thought about her question. Why had he helped her? He could have hidden. He could have gone back to his station and pretended he saw nothing. But he knew the answer. "Because it was the right thing to do," he said simply. "No one should be hunted like that." Lyra's antennae glowed a soft blue color, and Jake's translation device indicated this meant gratitude or happiness. "You are very brave for a human," she said. Jake laughed for the first time in weeks. "I am not brave. I am just a scientist who got lucky." They sat in comfortable silence for a while. Outside, the night had fully arrived. The purple forest was dark, except for the glowing plants. Jake made a simple bed for Lyra on his extra bunk and gave her a blanket. She curled up and closed her eyes. Finally safe. Jake sat by the window and watched the forest. He did not know it yet, but his lonely life was about to change forever. Tomorrow would bring new challenges, and a visitor he never expected. Jake woke up to the sound of footsteps outside his station. Many footsteps. He sat up quickly and looked at the security monitor by his bed. What he saw made his blood run cold. At least 20 Vela warriors stood in a circle around his building. They wore leather armor, decorated with strange symbols and carried long spears with crystal tips. Their antennae glowed a steady red color, which Jake's computer said meant they were ready for battle. In front of them all stood the biggest Vela Jake had ever seen. He was almost 7 feet tall, with broad shoulders and arms thick with muscle. Scars covered his silver-blue skin like a map of old battles. His eyes were sharp and focused, and his antennae pulsed with an aggressive orange light that made Jake nervous. Lyra woke up and saw the monitor. Her face went pale, and her antennae turned white with fear. "Oh no," she whispered. "Kale found me." "Who is Kale?" Jake asked. But then someone knocked on his door. No, not knocked. Pounded. The whole building shook. "Human," a deep voice called out in perfect galactic common. "Come out now. We need to talk." Jake looked at Lyra. She was shaking. "I am sorry. I am," she said. "I should have told you. Kyle is my promised mate. Our tribes arranged it when we were children. He is our greatest warrior. He has never lost a fight." Jake felt his stomach drop. This was not good. He walked to the door and opened it slowly, keeping his hands where everyone could see them. The big Vela warrior stood right in front of the door. Up close, he was even more impressive and scary. His eyes looked Jake up and down, like he was examining a small bug. "You are the human who saved Lyra," Kale said. It was not a question. "Yes," Jake said, trying to keep his voice steady. "She was being hunted by illegal traders. I helped her escape." "I know what you did," Kale said. "The hunters told us everything before we sent them away." "You found the hunters?" Jake asked, surprised. "We tracked them after they ran from your ridge stalkers. They were not hard to find. They were injured and scared." Kale crossed his massive arms. "They said a human took what belonged to them. They said you interfered with their business." "Their business was slavery," Jake said, feeling anger rise. "What they were doing was against galactic law. I do not care about their business or their laws," Kale said coldly. "I care that you touched what is mine." Jake blinked. "Excuse me?" Kale moved closer until he was standing right in front of Jake. "Lyra is promised to me. She belongs to me. But you saved her life. By the ancient laws of my people, the debt of stars, you now have a claim on her too." "Wait," Jake said, holding up his hands. "I do not want a claim on anyone. I just helped her because it was the right thing to do. I have no interest in being anyone's mate." "Your interest does not matter," Kale said firmly. "The law is clear. When someone saves the life of another's promised mate, they create a competing claim. Only combat can settle who has the stronger claim." Jake laughed, but it came out nervous and shaky. "You want to fight me? Over something I did not even ask for?" "I do not want to fight you," Kale said, and for a moment his expression softened. "But I must. It is our way. If I do not challenge you, I am weak. If I am weak, I cannot protect my tribe or my mate." Lyra came to the door and stood beside Jake. "Kale, please," she said in her own language. The translation device on Jake's belt turned her words into English. "This human did nothing wrong. He saved my life. Do not hurt him." Two. Kale looked at her with something that might have been love, but also possession. "I do this for us, Lyra. For our future. This human has disrupted our path. The law must be satisfied." "What if I refuse to fight?" Jake asked. One of the other warriors, an older Vela with white markings on his face, stepped forward. "If you refuse, you are a coward. A coward has no claim. Kale takes Lyra, and you are marked as someone without honor. You will never be welcome among our people." "And if I fight and lose?" Jake asked, though he already knew the answer. "Then the same thing happens," Kale said. "Lyra comes with me. The debt is settled." "And if I win?" Jake asked, not believing he actually had to ask this question. Then you have proven your claim is stronger than mine. Lyra becomes your mate, and I must accept it. Kale's antennae flashed bright red. But I have never lost a challenge. Not once in 15 years. Many have tried. All have failed. Jake looked at Lyra. She looked back at him with her large, sad eyes. He could see she did not want any of this. She did not want to be a prize to be won. But her culture had rules, and those rules were bigger than what any of them wanted. When does this fight happen? Jake asked quietly. At sunset, Kale said. That gives you time to prepare. You may choose any weapon you wish. I will match your choice. That is tradition. How does the fight end? Jake asked. When one of us cannot continue, or when one of us yields. Death is allowed but not required. I have no wish to kill you, human. You saved Lyra from bad men. That means you have courage. I respect courage. But respect does not change the law. Kale turned and walked back to his warriors. They all moved away from the station and began setting up a camp at the edge of the clearing. Jake watched them for a moment, then went back inside and closed the door. Lyra was crying. Tears ran down her silver-blue face, and her antennae had turned a pale gray color. I am so sorry, she said. This is my fault. I should not have wandered so far from my tribe. I should not have let you save me. Do not say that, Jake said, though his mind was racing. Those hunters would have taken you. You would be in a cage somewhere, being sold like an animal. What happened was not your fault. But now you must fight Kale. And he will hurt you. Lyra sat down on the floor and hugged her knees. He is the strongest warrior in 5 tribes. He has trained since he was a child. You are a scientist. You study plants and animals. How can you win? Jake sat down beside her. That was a very good question. How could he win? He was not a soldier. He had never been in a real fight in his life. The most dangerous thing he usually faced was taking blood samples from angry alien creatures. But then Jake thought about what Kale had said. I may choose any weapon I wish. That was interesting. Very interesting. Jake stood up and walked to his computer. He pulled up all the information he had on Vela culture and customs. He read everything he could find about their combat traditions. Lyra watched him work and slowly came to stand beside him. What are you looking for? She asked. I am looking for a way to not die, Jake said honestly. Tell me about these combat rituals. What are the exact rules? Lyra explained everything she knew. The combat had to last until one person could not continue. Both fighters had to agree on the terms before starting. The fight could use any weapons or tools, as long as both fighters agreed. The tribe elders had to witness it to make it official. Jake read and listened carefully. An idea was forming in his mind. It was crazy. It probably would not work. But it was the only chance he had. What if? Jake said slowly. The combat was not just about physical fighting. What if I could change the terms? Compart. Lyra looked confused. What do you mean? Kale said I could choose any weapon. What if I choose my mind? What if I make this about more than just hitting each other until someone falls down? I do not understand, Lyra said. Jake turned to face her. In human culture, we value many kinds of strength. Physical strength, yes, but also intelligence, creativity, and wisdom. If I am going to fight for my life, I want to fight in a way that gives me a chance. I need to make Kale agree to a different kind of combat. He will never agree, Lyra said, shaking her head. He is proud. He wants to prove he is the strongest. Maybe, Jake said. But he also said he respects courage. And he follows the law very strictly. If I can use those things, maybe I can convince him. Jake spent the rest of the day preparing. He gathered equipment from his lab. He studied maps of the area. He made notes about everything Lyra told him about her people and their customs. When the purple sun began to set, he felt as ready as he would ever be. Kale came to the door again. It is time, human. The elders are gathered. Are you ready to face me? Jake stepped outside. The clearing had been prepared for combat. The Vela warriors stood in a circle, creating an arena. The elder with white markings stood at one end, holding a long staff with crystals on top. Lyra stood beside him, her antennae dim with worry. Jake walked to the center of the circle. KL followed him. They stood facing each other, while the elder spoke in the Vela language. Jake's translator turned the words into English. We are here to witness the challenge for Lyra of the Silver Moon tribe. Kale the undefeated brings his claim as promised mate. Jake Morrison the human brings his claim as lifesaver. The combat will decide whose claim is stronger. What weapons do you choose? 2. Everyone looked at Jake. This was his moment. This was his only chance. He took a deep breath and said the words he had been practicing all day. I choose 3 trials instead of 1 fight. The clearing went silent. Every Vela stared at him. Kale's antennae flashed confusion, then anger. What are you talking about? You said I could choose any weapon, Jake said clearly. I choose a test of 3 trials. Physical strength, hunting skill, and wisdom. The one who wins 2 out of 3 trials wins the challenge. Kale's eyes narrowed. This is not traditional, but it is not against the law either, Jake said. He looked at the elder. Am I correct? The law says I may choose my weapon, and the terms of combat, as long as both fighters agree. The elder looked surprised, but nodded slowly. Why should I agree to this? Kale demanded. Jake met his eyes. Because you said you respect courage. Because you follow your laws. Because if you refuse, everyone will know you were afraid to test yourself in ways beyond simple violence. Is that the warrior you want to be? Someone who can only prove strength with fists and weapons? Kale's face hardened. Jake had challenged his pride, and everyone was watching. For a long moment, Kale said nothing. Then, he spoke. I agree to your 3 trials, human. But know this, I will defeat you in all 3. And when I do, Lyra will be mine, and you will leave this planet forever. Jake nodded. Agreed. The elder raised his staff. The challenge is accepted. The 3 trials will begin. May the stars guide the worthy. The first trial began immediately. Kale smiled with confidence as the elder explained the rules. The first trial is combat. Both fighters will face each other in traditional challenge. The fight ends when one cannot continue or yields. No weapons that kill from distance. Only close combat. Jake felt his heart pound. This was the trial he was most afraid of. Kale was bigger, stronger, and trained for exactly this kind of fighting. But Jake had studied the maps all day. He knew this forest better than anyone, except maybe the Vela themselves. That would have to be enough. The elder gave the signal. Kale moved forward slowly, like a cat stalking prey. His movements were smooth and controlled. Every muscle in his body was ready to strike. They were right. But fear was not the only thing driving him. Jake led Kale toward the eastern edge of the clearing, near the spot where the Crystal River ran underground. The ground there looked solid, but Jake had learned weeks ago that it was not. Water had worn away the soil beneath, leaving only a thin crust of earth and roots. It could hold the weight of one person standing still, but not someone running or jumping. Are you going to run all night, human? Kale called out. I am facing you, Jake said, still backing up. Kale's patience ended. He charged forward with frightening speed. Jake waited until the last second, then dropped and rolled to the side. Kale could not stop his momentum. He ran straight onto the weak ground. For a moment, nothing happened. Then the earth gave way beneath him. Kale fell through into a shallow sinkhole, water splashing up around him. He was not hurt, but he was stuck in mud up to his waist. The watching warriors gasped. Some made angry sounds. Others looked impressed. Jake stood up and brushed dirt off his clothes. He walked to the edge of the hole and looked down at Kale. "Do you yield?" Jake asked. Kale's face was red with anger and embarrassment. His antennae flashed violent orange, but he was stuck, and everyone could see it. Slowly, painfully, he spoke. "I yield the first trial." The warriors helped pull Kale out of the hole. He was covered in mud, and his pride was wounded. The elder raised his staff. "The first trial goes to Jake Morrison. The score is 1-0. Lyra's antennae glowed bright blue with relief. But Jake knew the hardest parts were still ahead. Kale would not underestimate him again. The elder announced the second trial. "Both fighters will hunt a razor wing. The one who captures it first, or captures it in the best way, wins. The hunt begins at dawn tomorrow." The tribe made camp for the night. Jake returned to his station and collapsed on his bed. His body ached, and his mind was exhausted. But he had won the first trial. He had actually won. Lyra brought him water and food. "That was very clever," she said. "But Kale is an expert hunter. The second trial will be much harder." "I know," Jake said. "But I have an idea. I need your help. I need your..." That night, Jake worked in his lab while Lyra described everything she knew about razor wings. They were flying predators with sharp beaks and claws. They hunted in the upper forest canopy and were extremely territorial. Catching one alive was considered one of the hardest tests of skill for young Vela warriors. Jake pulled out his portable scanner and modified it. He downloaded all the data his research computer had on razor wing behavior patterns. Then, he built a small device that could emit specific sound frequencies. If his theory was correct, razor wings responded to certain high-pitched sounds that reminded them of their own mating calls. He could use that to calm one long enough to capture it. When dawn came, Jake and Kale stood at the edge of the forest. The elder explained they would each hunt alone. The first to return with a captured razor wing would win. If neither could capture one by sunset, the one who came closest would be the winner. Kale looked at Jake with new respect and new suspicion. "You fight strangely, human. But hunting is different. This is what I was born to do. We will see," Jake said simply. They went in different directions. Kale moved through the forest like he was part of it, silent and swift. Jake watched him disappear, then headed toward the area where his research had shown the highest concentration of razor wing nests. He found tracks and droppings within an hour. Following standard Vela technique that Lyra had described, he could try to set up a trap and lure one down. That might work, but it would take time. Kale was probably doing the same thing, and he had years of experience. Jake needed a different approach. He set up his sound device in a small clearing and activated it. The device began emitting a low-frequency hum that slowly increased in pitch. Jake hid in the bushes and waited. For a long time, nothing happened. Then he heard wings, not the sharp, aggressive sounds of a hunting razor wing, but slower, more curious wing beats. A razor wing landed in the clearing. It was beautiful in a dangerous way. Its feathers were deep blue with silver edges. Its beak was curved and sharp. It cocked its head and listened to the sound device, clearly interested. Jake very slowly pulled out a second device. This one emitted a different sound, one his research suggested would be soothing to the creatures. He activated it and waited. The razor wing's aggressive posture relaxed slightly. It hopped closer to the sound device. Curious, now, instead of hostile. Moving very carefully, Jake stood up. The razor wing saw him and tensed, ready to fly away or attack. But Jake kept the soothing sound going and moved slowly, speaking softly. "It is okay. I am not going to hurt you. Just stay calm." It took 30 minutes of patient movement and careful sound adjustment. But eventually, Jake was close enough. The razor wing was so focused on the interesting sounds that it did not notice Jake slowly lowering a capture net over it. When Jake pulled the net closed, the creature squawked in surprise, but did not fight hard. The soothing sounds had done their job. Jake deactivated his devices and carefully carried the netted razor wing back to the camp. He arrived in the early afternoon. The watching warriors looked shocked. Some stood up and pointed. No one had expected the human to return so quickly. KL was not back yet. The elder came to examine Jake's capture. "The razor wing is unharmed," he said with surprise in his voice. "You caught it without fighting it?" "The razor wing. The 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 razor wing. I used sound to calm it," Jake explained. "My research showed they respond to certain frequencies. I did not want to hurt it. I just needed to capture it." Hours passed. The sun moved across the purple sky. Finally, as late afternoon arrived, Kale emerged from the forest. He was covered in scratches, and his armor was torn. In his arms he carried a razor wing wrapped in leather. The creature was alive but clearly had been in a fight. Kale himself was bleeding from several cuts. He stopped when he saw Jake's captured razor wing sitting calmly in a cage, apparently comfortable. Kale's eyes widened. "How?" he said simply. "Different method," Jake said. The elder examined both captures. Kyle brought his razor wing through traditional means, strength and skill. But Jake Morrison brought his without harm to himself or the creature, and in half the time, according to the laws of the hunt. The one who shows the most skill and wisdom in the capture wins. I declare Jake Morrison the winner of the second trial. Kale stood very still. His antennae had turned almost white. He had lost again. The greatest warrior of his tribe had been defeated twice by a human scientist. The watching warriors talked among themselves in low, amazed voices. The score was now 2-0. Jake only needed to win one more trial, or even tie the last one, and he would win the entire challenge. But Kale was not finished. "The third trial will be different," he said, his voice tight with controlled emotion. "This one cannot be won with clever tricks." The elder nodded. "The third trial is wisdom. I will present you both with a question that has challenged our people for generations. You will each give your answer. I and the other elders will judge whose answer shows greater wisdom." Jake felt his confidence waver. This was completely subjective. He did not know Vela philosophy or their history. How could he possibly give a wiser answer than Kale, who had grown up in this culture? But he had to try. Everything depended on it. The elder led them to the center of the camp, where the oldest Vela sat in a circle. These were the wisdom keepers of the tribe, the ones who remembered all the old stories and teachings. The elder spoke in a formal, ceremonial voice. "The question is this. A warrior has great strength and can defeat any enemy, but one day he meets an enemy he could easily destroy. Yet his tribe will suffer if he does. What is the warrior's greatest strength in this moment?" It was a riddle, but also a test of values. Jake thought carefully, while Kale prepared his answer. The watching tribe was silent. Even the wind seemed to stop, waiting for their responses. The elder pointed to Kale. "Speak your answer." Kyle stood tall despite his losses. The warrior's greatest strength is his loyalty to his tribe. He must put aside his desire for glory and protect his people. That is what makes him truly strong. Personal victory means nothing if the tribe suffers. The elders nodded. It was a good answer, traditional and honorable. They made notes on bark paper and whispered among themselves. Then the elder pointed to Jake. "Speak your answer." Jake took a deep breath. He thought about everything Lyra had told him. He thought about what he had learned watching Kale and his warriors. He thought about the situation he was in right now, fighting for something he never asked for because of laws he did not fully understand. The warrior's greatest strength, Jake said slowly, is knowing when not to fight. True strength is not just about defeating enemies. It is about protecting what matters. Sometimes that means fighting. Sometimes it means walking away. The strongest warrior is the one who knows the difference. He does not fight because he can. He fights only when he must. And when he chooses not to fight, that choice takes more courage than any battle. Jake paused, then continued. The warrior in the question could destroy his enemy easily, but he knows his tribe will suffer. So his greatest strength is the strength to show mercy, to find another way, to be strong enough to be gentle when gentleness serves his people better than violence. The clearing was completely silent. The elders looked at each other with expressions Jake could not read. Kale stared at Jake with an unreadable expression. Even Lyra seemed surprised. The elder stood and walked slowly around the circle. He whispered with the other elders for a long time. Finally, he returned to the center. Both answers show wisdom, he said. Kale speaks truth about loyalty and sacrifice. These are the foundations of our people. He turned to Jake. But Jake Morrison has given us something we have not heard before. He speaks of a strength we do not always honor. The strength of choosing not to fight. The strength of mercy. The elder raised his staff high. In all my years, I have heard the traditional answer many times, but this is the first answer that speaks to both strength and compassion together. I and the other elders agree. Jake Morrison wins the third trial. The watching warriors erupted in noise. Some cheered, some argued, some simply stood in shock. Jake had done it. He had won all 3 trials. He had defeated Kale, the undefeated. Kale stood very still, processing what had happened. His whole identity was built on being the strongest warrior. And he had just lost to a human scientist who used intelligence instead of strength, patience instead of aggression, and wisdom instead of tradition. Jake walked over to him. You fought with honor, Jake said. In your way, you are still undefeated. I just fought in a different way. Kale looked at him for a long moment. Then, slowly, he lowered his head in a gesture of respect. You have won, Jake Morrison. The claim is yours. According to the law, Lyra now belonged to Jake. But as everyone waited to see what would happen next, Jake did something no one expected, something that would change everything again. Jake turned to face the gathered tribe. Every eye was on him. According to their law, Lyra was now his mate. The debt was settled. The challenge was won. But Jake had not fought for 3 trials just to claim someone as property. I have won the challenge, Jake said loudly so everyone could hear. According to your law, Lyra is now mine. But I refuse the claim. Confusion spread through the tribe. Warriors looked at each other with bewilderment. The elders frowned. Even Lyra looked shocked, her antennae flickering between different colors as her emotions changed rapidly. What are you saying? The elder asked. In human culture, we believe people should choose their own mates. Love and partnership should be freely given, not won or claimed. Jake looked at Lyra. I helped you because you needed help. I fought this challenge because I had no choice. But I will not accept you as a mate just because I won some trials. That is not right. Kale stepped forward. His expression was a mixture of confusion and something that might have been anger. You refuse the claim? After all this? You insult our traditions. I mean no insult, Jake said firmly. I respect your traditions. I followed your laws. But now that I have won, I choose to use my right to release Lyra from any obligation to me. The elder looked troubled. This is unprecedented. No one has ever won the challenge, and then refused the prize. I do not know what the law says about this. Some of the older warriors began arguing among themselves. Half of them seemed to think Jake's action was noble and honorable. The other half thought he was making a mockery of their customs. Voices grew louder. The peaceful ceremony was turning into a heated debate. Then Lyra stepped forward. Her voice was small at first, but grew stronger as she spoke. I have a right too. A right that is rarely used but exists in our law. The right of the female to reject both claimants if she finds neither worthy. Everyone went silent again. The elder's eyes widened. The right of rejection. Yes, it exists. But Lyra, this is very serious. If you reject both claims, you shame both warriors, and yourself. No one else will be allowed to claim you for 5 years. I understand, Lyra said. Her antennae glowed a steady, determined blue. But I do not reject both. I reject only Kale's claim. Kale's face darkened with anger and hurt. What? Why? Lyra turned to face him. Her voice was sad but clear. Because you see me as a prize, Kale. Something to be won and possessed. You are a great warrior. You are strong and brave. But you have never asked me what I want. You have never asked me how I feel. To you, I am just another victory, to add to your reputation. That is not true, Kale said. But his voice lacked conviction. Then tell me, Lyra said, what is my favorite food? What do I dream about? What makes me happy or sad? Do you know any of these things? Kale opened his mouth, but no words came out. He did not know. He had never asked. To him, the arrangement had always been simple. She was promised to him. That was all that mattered. Lyra turned to Jake. You saved my life without knowing who I was. You fought for me even though you did not want to claim me. You respected my choice even when the law gave you power over me. That is why I choose to stay with you. Not as your mate, because you have not asked for that, but as your friend and student. I want to learn from you. I want to understand humans better, and maybe, in time, we can see if there is something more between us, but it will be our choice, not because of debt or tradition or law. She knelt in front of Jake, a gesture of deep respect among her people. Will you accept me as a companion and friend? Jake felt emotion rising in his chest. This brave young woman was choosing her own path, breaking tradition to follow her heart. How could he refuse that? Yes, he said softly. I would be honored to have you as my friend. Kale made a sound like a wounded animal. His antennae flashed, violent red. This is wrong. You mock our ways. You corrupt our traditions with your human ideas. Several of the younger warriors moved to stand beside KL. They looked angry too. One of them, a tall Vela with a scar across his face, pointed at Jake. The elder was wrong to allow this challenge. Humans should not interfere with our customs. This outsider has brought shame to us all. Shame, Jake said, feeling his own anger rise. The only shame here is how you treat your women. Lyra is not property. She is a person with her own thoughts and feelings. Any culture that does not recognize that needs to change. You dare judge us? Kale shouted. You know nothing of our ways. You have been here for mere months, while we have lived by these laws for centuries. Ancient does not mean right, Jake said. Slavery was ancient too, on many worlds. That did not make it good. The tribe was splitting into 2 groups. The elders and some of the older warriors stood on one side, looking thoughtful and uncertain. Kael and the younger warriors stood on the other side, angry and defensive. The tension in the air was thick enough to cut. The elder raised his staff and struck the ground 3 times. Enough. This debate must be settled properly. We will convene a full tribal council tonight. All voices will be heard. Until then, no violence. That is my command as elder. But before anyone could respond, a sharp whistling sound cut through the air. A burst of blue energy struck the ground near Lyra's feet. She screamed and jumped back. Everyone turned to see where the shot had come from. At the edge of the clearing, figures in dark armor emerged from the forest. The hunters had returned, and this time, they had brought many more men with them. The lead hunter stepped forward, his weapon pointed at the crowd. Jake recognized him from 2 nights ago. "We tracked our property here," the hunter said coldly. "We are taking back what belongs to us, along with a few others. Exotic aliens fetch good prices in the outer markets, especially ones as pretty as these." There were at least 15 hunters, all heavily armed with advanced weapons. They spread out, surrounding the clearing. Their intent was clear. They were not here to negotiate. They were here to capture as many Vila as they could carry. The Vela warriors grabbed their spears, but the hunters laughed. "Primitive weapons against plasma rifles? You will all be stunned before you take 3 steps. Drop your spears, or we start shooting." Jake's mind raced. The hunters had better weapons and better armor. The Vela were brave, but they would be slaughtered. He had to think of something fast. His eyes went to his station, 50 meters away. Inside were his tools, his equipment, his research materials, and something else. Something that might give them a chance. "Wait!" Jake shouted. "Do not shoot. I have something you want more than these aliens." The lead hunter looked at him with interest. "What could you possibly have that is worth more?" "Data," Jake said quickly, making it up as he went. "Research data on this planet. Locations of rare minerals worth millions. Medical plants that can cure diseases, all stored in my research station. It is worth far more than what you would get for a few captured aliens. Let me show you. Wrapped in my research. Let me show you." The hunter considered this. Greed flickered in his eyes. "You have 2 minutes. Try anything, and we kill everyone here." Jake walked slowly toward his station. His heart pounded so hard he thought everyone could hear it. Kale watched him with suspicious eyes. Lyra looked terrified. The elder remained calm, but alert. Jake reached his door and went inside. The hunters kept their weapons trained on the tribe. 2 hunters followed Jake inside to make sure he did not try anything. Jake walked to his computer and pretended to access files. His real target was on the shelf above the desk. A small metal case containing emergency supplies. Inside were several items every research station was required to have: medical supplies, communication devices, and 3 plasma charges designed to destroy sensitive data if the station was ever compromised by hostile forces. Each charge was small, but powerful enough to level a building. Jake had hoped he would never need to use them. He had been wrong. "Hurry up," one of the hunters said, pointing his weapon at Jake's back. "Almost there," Jake said. He grabbed the case and spun around. Before the hunters could react, he threw the case hard at the ground between them. The case broke open, and Jake grabbed 2 of the plasma charges. The hunters raised their weapons, but Jake was faster. He activated 1 charge and threw it out the door toward the hunters outside. Then he held up the 2nd charge where everyone could see it. "Everyone run!" Jake shouted. "Get away from here now!" The charge he had thrown landed among the hunters outside. They had 5 seconds before it detonated. Some of them realized what it was and tried to run. Others stood frozen in confusion. The Vela warriors did not hesitate. Years of survival instinct kicked in, and they scattered into the forest, dragging the elders with them. The charge exploded with a blast of heat and light. The concussive wave knocked everyone off their feet. Trees caught fire. Hunters screamed. Jake ran out of his station, holding the 2nd charge over his head. The 2 hunters inside his station tried to follow, but the elder charge he had left behind detonated, destroying the entire building in a ball of fire. Jake ran into the forest where the Vela had fled. Behind him, the clearing was chaos. Some hunters were injured. Some were dead. Others were trying to regroup and figure out what had happened, but their organization was broken. Their advantage was gone. And the Vela warriors were angry. Jake found Kale and Lyra hiding behind a massive tree trunk. Can your warriors fight now? Jake asked, breathing hard. While they are confused? Kale stared at him. Then a fierce smile spread across his face. Yes, now we can fight. He let out a high-pitched whistle that echoed through the forest. Warriors emerged from hiding places all around the clearing. They had been trained for forest combat their entire lives. This was their territory. And now, they had the element of surprise. The battle began. But this time, it was very different from the hunters' easy ambush. The Vela used hit-and-run tactics, striking from the trees and disappearing before the hunters could respond. Jake coordinated their efforts, using his knowledge of military strategy from the books he had read during his long, lonely months. He directed groups to flank the hunters, to cut off their escape routes, to separate them from each other. And Kale fought like a demon unleashed. All his anger and frustration from losing the challenge poured into his attacks. He moved so fast the hunters could barely track him. His spear struck with lethal precision. Other warriors followed his lead, feeding off his energy and fury. Jake found a weapon from a fallen hunter and used it to provide covering fire. He was not a good shot, but he did not need to be. He just needed to keep the hunters pinned down while the Vela warriors closed in. During the fighting, Jake saw a hunter aiming at Kale's back. Without thinking, Jake threw himself forward and tackled the hunter. The weapon discharged, and hot plasma burned across Jake's shoulder. Pain exploded through his body, but he kept fighting. He punched the hunter hard in the face, and the man went down. Kyle turned and saw what had happened. Their eyes met for a brief moment. Kyle nodded once, then went back to fighting. That simple nod contained more meaning than words ever could. Respect. Acknowledgement. The beginning of trust. The battle lasted 20 minutes but felt like hours. When it finally ended, most of the hunters were captured or had fled into the forest. The lead hunter lay unconscious on the ground, bound with Vela rope. Jake sat against a tree, holding his burned shoulder, watching the warriors celebrate their victory. Lyra ran to him with medical supplies. "You saved Kale's life," she said, as she cleaned his wound. "You could have died." "So could he?" Jake said through gritted teeth. "The burn hurt badly. I was not going to let that happen." Kale walked over. He was covered in soot and blood but appeared uninjured. He looked down at Jake with an expression that was completely different from before. The anger was gone. The pride was tempered. In its place was something new. Understanding. "You risked your life for me," Kale said. "I was your rival. Your enemy. Yet you protected me." "You are not my enemy," Jake said. "You never were. We just had different ideas about the same situation." Kale sat down beside Jake. For a long time, neither of them spoke. They just sat together. Two warriors from different worlds who had been forced to understand each other. Finally, Kale broke the silence. "I was wrong about you, Jake Morrison. You are not weak. You do not fight like us. You do not think like us. But you have your own kind of strength. I see that now." The tribe worked through the night, binding the captured hunters and tending to their own wounded. Jake's research station was destroyed. Nothing but burning wreckage and melted equipment. Everything he had worked on for 8 months was gone. But he was alive. They were all alive. That was what mattered. The elder approached Jake as Lyra finished bandaging his shoulder. The old Vela's antennae glowed a soft, respectful blue. "You used your knowledge to save us all. You destroyed your own home to protect people you barely know. This is true sacrifice. I could not let them take your people." Jake said simply. "Those hunters are criminals. They belong in prison, not out here, hurting innocent lives." "We need to contact the authorities," the elder said. "But our communication devices do not reach far enough. We can only speak to nearby tribes." Jake remembered his backup transmitter. It was in a storage container, buried 50 meters from the station. He had put it there months ago, as a precaution. He led several warriors to the spot, and they dug it up. The transmitter was old but functional. Jake activated it and sent out an emergency signal on all Galactic Enforcement Agency frequencies. Help should arrive within 12 hours, Jake said. They take these kinds of crimes very seriously. These hunters will face justice. KL stood nearby, watching Jake work. When the transmission was complete, he stepped forward. The council must meet now. We have much to discuss. The tribe gathered in a new clearing, away from the burned area. The elders sat in a circle, with the elder in the center. All the warriors arranged themselves around the outside. Jake and Lyra were asked to sit in places of honor beside the elders. This was significant. It meant the tribe now saw them as important members of their community. The elder spoke in a formal voice. Last night, we were divided. Some believed the human brought shame to our traditions. Others believed he brought new wisdom. But today, all those arguments seem small. This human risked everything to protect us. He destroyed his home. He fought beside us. He saved the life of our greatest warrior. Now, we must decide. What does this mean for our tribe and our relationship with humans? One of the older warriors stood. His name was Garrett, and he had been one of those defending traditional ways. I spoke against Jake Morrison yesterday. I said he did not understand our ways. I was wrong. He may not understand all our customs, but he understands honor. He understands sacrifice. These are the things that truly matter. Another warrior stood. Jake Morrison showed us that strength comes in many forms. Kale is strong in battle, but Jake is strong in mind and heart. Both kinds of strength have value. Our tribe has been so focused on physical power that we forgot to value other kinds of excellence. More warriors spoke, each sharing their thoughts. Slowly, a consensus formed. The tribe had learned something important. They had been so caught up in their own traditions that they had stopped questioning whether those traditions still served them well. Finally, the elder raised his hand for silence. I have lived for 87 years. I have seen many things, but I have never seen what happened these past 2 days. A human came to our forest alone. He saved one of our daughters. He defeated our champion through wisdom instead of violence. He gave up his claim when he could have taken what he won. And then, he saved us all from those who would have made us slaves. The elder stood and walked to where Jake sat. Jake Morrison, you have shown us that honor and strength exist beyond our own customs. You have challenged us to think about our ways and consider if they are still right. You have earned something no human has ever received. I offer you membership in our tribe. You would be the first of your kind to be called one of us. Jake felt emotion well up in his chest. To be accepted like this, by people so different from himself, was more meaningful than he had words to express. I accept, he said, his voice rough with feeling. I am honored. I am honored. The elder placed his hand on Jake's head, a gesture of blessing. Then it is done. Jake Morrison is now of the Silver Moon tribe. His victories are our victories. His struggles are our struggles, and his wisdom is our wisdom. The warriors began chanting in their language, a rhythmic sound that spoke of celebration and acceptance. Lyra's antennae glowed the brightest blue Jake had ever seen. She was crying, but her tears were happy ones. When the chanting ended, Kale stood. He walked to the center of the circle and looked at Jake. I have something to say. His voice was serious, but not angry. I challenged Jake Morrison because I thought he threatened what was mine. I thought strength could only look one way. I thought tradition was more important than truth. I was wrong about all of these things. KL turned to Lyra. And I owe you an apology, Lyra. You asked me what your favorite food was, what you dream about. I could not answer because I never asked. I saw you as a prize, not a person. That was wrong. You deserve better. You deserve someone who sees you for who you are, not what you represent. Lyra stood and walked to Kale. She placed her hand on his arm, a gesture of forgiveness. You are a good warrior, Kale. Someday, you will be a good mate too. But you need to learn to see with your heart, not just your eyes. When you learn that, you will find someone who chooses you freely. That kind of love is better than any arranged bond. Kale nodded slowly. I understand. And I release my claim on you. Not because I lost, but because it is right. You should choose your own path. He turned back to Jake and held out his arm in a warrior's greeting. Jake stood, wincing at the pain in his shoulder, and gripped Kale's arm. Friends? Jake asked. Friends, Kale agreed. Though I still owe you a rematch someday. A fair fight, just to see who is truly stronger. Jake laughed. You would win that easily. Let's stick to being friends instead. The sound of engines broke through the peaceful moment. Everyone looked up to see 3 ships descending from the sky. They were Galactic Enforcement Agency vessels, responding to Jake's signal. The ships landed in the clearing, and armed officers emerged. Jake met them and explained everything that had happened. The captured hunters were loaded onto the ships and taken away. The officer in charge promised they would face serious charges. Before leaving, the officer spoke with Jake privately. Your research station is destroyed. The agency will send a new one, but it will take a few weeks. Do you have somewhere to stay until then? Krasa. Jake looked back at the tribe. Lyra waved at him. The elder nodded. Even Kale smiled slightly. Yes, Jake said. I have somewhere to stay. The ships departed, taking the criminals away. Jake returned to the tribe, and they welcomed him with food and shelter. Over the following days, Jake learned about Vela culture from the inside. He ate their food, learned their language beyond what the translator provided, and listened to their stories. The warriors taught him basic fighting techniques, not because he needed to challenge anyone, but because they wanted to share their knowledge with their new brother. Lyra spent most of her time with Jake, serving as his guide and teacher. Their friendship grew naturally, built on respect and genuine affection. She was fascinated by human science and philosophy. He was fascinated by her people's connection to the forest and their deep understanding of natural balance. They complemented each other perfectly. One evening, as they sat by the fire, Lyra asked Jake a question. Jake thought about it. Sometimes, I miss certain foods. I miss old friends, but I don't miss being lonely. Before I met you and your tribe, I was so isolated. Now I have a family. That is worth more than anything Earth could offer me. What will you do when the new research station arrives? Lyra asked. Keep studying, Jake said. But differently now. Not just as an outsider observing. As a member of the tribe, helping to document our culture and knowledge. Your people know so much about this planet. That knowledge should be shared with the galaxy, so others can learn from you. Kale joined them by the fire. He had become a regular presence in their conversations. The rivalry had transformed into genuine friendship. The elder wants to make you an official ambassador, Kale said. Someone who can speak to other humans about our tribe. Help us establish good relationships with your people. I would like that, Jake said. But I am just one person. Can I really make that much difference? You already have, Kale said. You have shown us that humans can be trusted, that they value honor and sacrifice, that they respect other cultures. Other humans will come now, because of you. Scientists, diplomats, maybe even settlers. You will be the bridge between our worlds. Over the next few weeks, things changed quickly. The Galactic Enforcement Agency sent investigators who interviewed everyone about the Hunter operation. Their testimony led to the shutdown of 3 major illegal exotic pet trading rings. Dozens of captured aliens were freed and returned to their homeworlds. The research foundation that employed Jake was so impressed with his work that they approved funding for a cultural exchange center instead of just a research station. The new facility would be bigger, with space for both human scientists and Vela teachers. It would be a place where both cultures could learn from each other. Jake's reports about his experiences with the Vela tribe became famous throughout human space. Other scientists wanted to come study this world properly, with respect and cooperation instead of distant observation. The Vela Council agreed to allow more humans, but only under strict guidelines. They would share their knowledge, but not be exploited. They would welcome friendship, but not domination. Lyra became an official liaison between the tribe and the human visitors. She learned English fluently and studied human culture with the same enthusiasm Jake showed for her people. She helped translate not just words, but meanings and intentions. She prevented dozens of cultural misunderstandings before they could become problems. KL took on a new role too. He became the trainer for a new generation of warriors who would serve as protectors and guides for the Cultural Exchange Center. He taught them not just how to fight, but how to communicate with aliens, how to resolve conflicts peacefully, and how to show strength through restraint. The lessons Jake had taught him during their challenge became part of his teaching. 3 months after the Hunter attack, the new Cultural Exchange Center opened. It was built at the edge of the forest, designed to blend with the natural environment. Human scientists and Vela teachers worked side by side. Children from the tribe came to learn about the galaxy beyond their world. Human students came to learn about Vela, philosophy, and forest craft. On opening day, Jake stood with Lyra and Kale, watching as people from both cultures mingled peacefully. The elder approached them, moving slowly with his age, but still strong in spirit. "You have done well, Jake Morrison," the elder said. "When you first came here, you were a lonely man studying a strange world. Now look at what you have created. A place of friendship and learning. A bridge between worlds." "I did not do it alone," Jake said. "All of this happened because Lyra needed help, and because Kale challenged me to prove myself, and because your tribe chose to accept me. We did this together." The elder smiled. "That is wisdom speaking. Hold on to that. Remember always that the greatest achievements come not from one person's strength, but from many people choosing to work together." As the sun set on that first day, painting the purple forest in shades of gold and violet, Jake realized something profound. He had come to this planet expecting to study alien life from a distance. Instead, he had become part of it. He had found family among strangers. He had discovered that the galaxy was not about different species living apart, but about different people, learning to understand each other. Lyra stood beside him, watching the sunset. "What are you thinking?" she asked. "I am thinking about how strange life is," Jake said. "A few months ago, I was completely alone. Then I saved one person. That one choice led to everything that happened after. The challenge, the battle, all of this." He gestured at the Cultural Exchange Center. "That is how change happens," Lyra said wisely. "Not through grand plans or big armies, but through small choices to do the right thing, even when it is hard. You chose to help me when you could have hidden. That was the moment everything changed. I just did what anyone should do," Jake said. "No," Kale said, joining their conversation. "Most people would have hidden. Most people would have protected themselves first. You chose differently. That is what makes you special, Jake Morrison. Not your intelligence, though you are smart. Not your cleverness, though you are clever. But your heart. You have a good heart." Jake felt his eyes getting wet. He blinked the tears away. "Thank you. Both of you. For everything." They stood together in comfortable silence as the stars began to appear. The same stars that hung over Earth, millions of light years away. The same stars that connected all the worlds of the galaxy. Jake was no longer lonely. He had found his place, not on Earth, and not quite on this alien world either, but somewhere in between. In that space where different cultures met and mixed, where strangers became friends, where the impossible became possible. Lyra leaned against Jake's shoulder. a gesture of deep affection among her people. He put his arm around her carefully, mindful of both their healing wounds. Kale stood on Jake's other side, a warrior and a friend. Together, they watched the night arrive. The cultural exchange center behind them glowed with warm light. Voices drifted out. Human and Vela mixed together in conversation and laughter. Children played in the courtyard, their different appearances and abilities blending into one community. Teachers from both species shared their knowledge. Scientists collaborated on new projects. And somewhere in all of that, barriers were breaking down. Fear was being replaced with understanding. Distance was being replaced with connection. Jake thought about the title he had been given. Ambassador, bridge, cultural liaison. These were big words for what he really did. He just talked to people. He listened. He learned. He helped others do the same. Maybe that was all any ambassador really did. Just show people that those who seem different are not so different after all. That we all want the same basic things. Safety, family, purpose, belonging. I wonder what tomorrow will bring, Lyra said softly. More of this, Jake said. More people coming together. More learning. More growth. That is what I hope for. That is what we will build, Kale said firmly. Together. And that single word summed up everything. Together. Not humans alone. Not Vela alone. But both. Working side by side. Learning from each other. Protecting each other. Building something new that honored both their traditions, while creating space for something better. The purple forest whispered in the night breeze. And Jake Morrison, the lonely scientist who once thought he would spend his life observing the universe from a distance, stood, surrounded by family and friends, knowing he had found exactly where he belonged. His journey had started with one simple choice: to help someone who needed it. And that choice had changed everything. Not just for him, but for two entire peoples. Sometimes the smallest acts of kindness create the biggest waves of change. Sometimes, one person really can make a difference. Not by being special, or chosen, or destined, but simply by choosing to do right when it would be easier to do nothing. Jake smiled and pulled his friends closer. Tomorrow would bring new challenges, more people to meet, more misunderstandings to resolve, more bridges to build. But tonight, he was content. Tonight, he was home. And he was no longer alone.